Welcome back, everybody, to another in my aviation history series, and this is episode 28 in my history on the RCAF. And in today's video, we're going to be looking at the history of 425 Squadron. Now, it began in World War II as a bomber unit, a pretty unique bomber unit, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, and continues today flying as a frontline fighter unit. And as always, before we get too far into this video, my name is Sean, and this is Sean's Aviation. And again, just before we jump into this video, I want to say thank you for everybody out there who is watching this. If you haven't yet and you do enjoy what you're watching, down below, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. That'll allow everyone out there to know when I release new content, and you guys can stay up to date with my channel. As well, if you guys are enjoying what I do and would like to help out in a bit more of a concrete way, down below you can click on the link to my coffee account. You can buy me a coffee. I don't have one right now, but I almost always have one. It's currently sitting upstairs. It's getting cold, as it does. But I almost always have a coffee on the go when I'm down here doing my work. So if you guys would like to help out, offset some of the costs that this channel incurs, by all means, go down, buy me that coffee. But please don't feel obligated. I'm not begging for money. I do what I do because I love doing it, and I get to take you along for the ride. So all of that being said, let's jump into this video. We'll take a look at the history of 425 Squadron. 425 Squadron was formed on June 22nd of 1942 at Dishforth as the RCAF's 5th Bomber Squadron and was the first French-Canadian unit formed within the RCAF. So the RCAF went through its roster for any French-Canadian personnel and proceeded to transfer these members into this unit. It was part of 4 Group, assigned the squadron code KW, and was given Wellingtons as their first aircraft. Now, the first aircraft didn't arrive till August, and they quickly began to train up on these new aircraft. The unit flying its first mission on the night of October 5th and 6th, 1942, when 5 aircraft took part in a mission to bomb Aachen. On January 1st of 1943, the unit moved over to 6th Group, the RCAF Bomber Group, but stayed at Dishforth. In April, the unit was selected as one of the RCAF units, along with 420 and 424 squadrons, that would be relocated to North Africa to help support the invasion of Italy. So you can see my video on 424 Squadron above. So as such, the unit converted to the Wellington Mark 10 in order to start training and be better prepared when they arrived in North Africa. The Mark 10 had more powerful engines, along with some other minor changes from the Mark 3, and in 425 Squadron's case, especially a tropicalized version that had special equipment including dust filters to better handle the heat and dust in North Africa. On May 1st, the ground crew started to head to North Africa by ship, and the aircrew left on June 5th, flying their squadron aircraft to their new base. Now, one Wellington was shot down en route over the Bay of Biscay, and the crew was interned for the remainder of the war in neutral Portugal. All crew and aircraft, save for the one, arrived at their new base in Cameroon, Tunisia by June 23rd. The unit flew their first operational mission on August 1st with a raid on Italy. On September 30th, the unit moved to the Hanny East landing field and continued to support the invasion of Sicily and later the invasion of Italy proper. By October, it was decided to move 425 Squadron back to England, and the unit began to prepare for the return, the entire complement returning via ship, leaving the equipment and aircraft in Tunisia for another RAF unit to take over. The entire unit was back in England by November 6th, and they returned to their original base at Dishforth and would re-equip with the Halifax Mark III. Immediately on return, the unit was given a few weeks' leave, and upon returning on November 30th, the process of converting to a new aircraft type began, with crews being sent to a heavy bomber OTU, or Operational Training Unit. It was also decided that the unit would relocate to Thorthorpe with the aircraft change, and the remaining personnel of the unit began to move on December 12th. Throughout December 1943 and January of 1944, crews began to return from conversion, and the Halifaxes that were delivered to the unit needed to be air-tested, and further training for new crews was carried out prior to their first op. This first mission with the Halifax took place on the night of February 19th and 20th, when 2 aircraft were dispatched to bomb Leipzig. The unit continued to bomb occupied Europe and Germany proper for the remaining of the war. The last mission was flown on April 25th, when 8 aircraft bombed positions on an island off the coast of Netherlands. After this, the unit began to re-equip with the Lancaster Mark 10, but hostilities ceased before the unit was fully converted. With the war in Europe over, 425 was selected as one of the units for Tiger Force, the RAF's commitment to the bombing campaign in the Far East, and 425 Squadron returned to Canada in order to train and equip properly before flying to their new bases in the Pacific. The unit made its way to its new base, Debert, Nova Scotia, on June 15, 1945, and started to train for the long-distance over-water missions that the Pacific Theater would entail. Before they could complete training, however, Japan surrendered on August 14th, and there was no longer a need for a bomber squadron. It disbanded on September 5th, 1945. During World War II, the unit flew 3,694 sorties, amassing 20,231 operational hours. It dropped 9,152 tons of bombs during these missions and was credited with 7 enemy aircraft shot down and 1 damaged. The unit lost 55 aircraft, with 37 aircrew killed, 153 missing presumed dead, 91 POWs, 7 interned, and 53 who evaded capture. The post-war life of 425 Squadron started on October 1, 1954, when the unit was reactivated at Saint-Hubert as an all-weather fighting unit. It was assigned the squadron code BB and was given CF-100 Mark IVs as their first aircraft. They stayed at Saint-Hubert and provided all-weather air defense for NORAD, protecting North America. It was selected as the first unit to receive the CF-101 Voodoo and as such deactivated on May 1st of 1961 in preparation for delivery of the first aircraft. It was reactivated on October 15, 1961 at Nemeo, Alberta, and received their first few trainer variants of the CF-101 that were delivered. After all the crew was trained, it was given the task of training and converting the other 4 squadrons who would convert onto the CF-101, 409, 410, 414, and 416 squadrons. Once these units were completely converted, 425 transitioned to an operational unit, relocating to Bagotville in July of 1962, and was fully operational by October 1st, when No. 3 All-Weather OTU took over the CF-101 lead-in training. 425 Squadron was integrated into the Canadian Forces in February of 1968 and continued to fly the CF-101 right up into the 1980s, when the Canadian Forces began to replace them with the CF-18s. It was one of the CF-101 units to have painted up a retirement bird, and in my opinion, is one of the 2 best, the other being the 409 bird. So you can see my history on 409 Squadron above. The unit got its first Hornet in 1985, and 425 continued to provide frontline NORAD defense throughout the late 80s, into the 90s, and the post-Cold War era. In the early 2000s, with a drawdown in the Air Force units, 425 Squadron merged with 433 Squadron, remaining in Bagotville and remaining as a predominantly French unit. In 2006, the squadron celebrated its 60th anniversary and had a CF-18 painted up in a special scheme to celebrate. A few years later, in 2008, the unit relocated to Italy and took part in Operation Allied Force, the NATO mission in Libya. The 18 CF-18s accounted for nearly 10% of all bombs dropped, a proportionally large contribution. This participation resulted in the unit's first battle honor since World War II, as well as some really cool-looking mission markings on the CF-18s. Today, 425 Squadron continues to provide frontline fighter support for the RCAF on the east coast of Canada, based at Bagotville, along with a reformed 433 Squadron. Now, as you can see, 425 has had a long and highly distinguished career and is one of the most important, I'd probably say the second most important CF-18 unit behind 410 Squadron in the RCAF, and will, I hope, continue to hold that position. With the impending, there's the word I'm thinking of, with the impending introduction of the F-35, I don't see 425 Squadron going anywhere. I see them adopting the F-35 and continuing to be on the leading edge of the RCAF's fighter force. Time will tell, and until then, thanks for watching.